Welcome to Two Ends of the Scale, the podcast where you'll get to hear two musicians from very different backgrounds talking about music. My name is Alan.
And my name's Sam.
Now, as I say, we come from very different backgrounds. Sam, you introduce your background.
I am a classically trained musician, and I know absolutely nothing about popular music.
And I'm a self-taught musician, and I know absolutely nothing about classical music. In each episode, we're going to play one another 3 pieces of music, and there'll be a certain theme to go with them, and then we'll talk about them. Sam will talk intelligently, I will talk incoherently. Sam, what is the theme of this special pilot episode?
The theme of this episode is hearing it wrong.
Hearing it wrong?
What?
What do we mean by hearing it wrong?
That's a good question. I hope that I have come up with some interesting pieces on that. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is misheard lyrics. Mm-hmm. I have decided not to choose any misheard lyrics, mostly because the music I'm familiar with, the texts are all in Latin, so... Yeah.
So I probably won't understand the lyrics and therefore won't really be able to mishear them.
Yeah. So actually I've chosen 2 of them are instrumental pieces anyway.
Okay, that's going to be really interesting. I really struggled to find pieces of music that weren't just misheard lyrics. But I do have some. Who's going to go first?
Have you got a misheard lyric?
Yeah, let's get misheard lyrics out of the way, because I think they probably are the most common thing that people hear wrong in music. But in a way, they're the least interesting, aren't they? Because it's not really the music that you're hearing wrong, it's just language.
Yes, and I don't know if we'll have very much to say about misheard lyrics other than having a good laugh.
I was thinking about this earlier actually today. Misheard lyrics is just like when children or even adults just mishear a phrase. And I was thinking of examples, and one of them is I'll try and get you to say it, Sam. If you're on like the edge of your seat and you're just waiting for the conclusion or the climax, you would describe yourself as being on...
tenterhooks?
That's correct.
Were you hoping I would say tender hooks?
I was, Sam, but knowing your skill with language, I wasn't going to catch you out there. And my second example is even worse, and you wouldn't ever say it. But think about furniture. Mm-hmm. You've got your wardrobes, tables, chairs. What would you keep your socks in?
Are you wanting me to say Chester drawers?
I am. It's almost like we prepared this in advance. But we haven't. Yeah, and people say that, don't they? They say Chester drawers, thinking it's Chester drawers. I cheated, Sam, and I actually went on Wikipedia to see if there were any other good examples. And one of them was a misheard lyric in the American national, United States of America national anthem. Do you know what the first line is?
Oh, say, can you see?
Yes. By the...
I think the next word is dawn.
It is, by the dawn's early light. And apparently lots of children in school think it's Donsley. Like Donsley is by the Donsley light. Mm. That's the first example of a misheard lyric. Let's actually hear some music though. Now, just to clarify, for copyright reasons, we're not going to include the entire song, are we?
No, but hopefully we can provide enough detail for people to find it. Yeah,
we will have show notes with links to the songs that we're talking about, and we may even have tiny clips of the songs. Sam, have you ever heard How to Save a Life by the Fray?
Yes. I think so.
Sam, this goes against everything I know about you.
The only bit I can remember is the tune for that one line.
Okay.
I know I have heard it before because I can hear a tune for that line.
That's quite... Listeners, this is very unusual for Sam to have heard some popular music.
This does sound familiar.
Step one, you say we need to talk. He walks, he says just talk. He smiles.
Within the first 20 seconds of that song, there's a lyric that I will never hear right because I always hear it wrong. And it doesn't help because it's quite a meaningful song. Like, it's really heartfelt and really sincere and quite emotional. Shall I tell you what the actual lyrics are? And then I'll tell you what I think they are, or what I hear them as.
Can we have one more listen first?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, I can't remember. Step on, you say we need to talk?
Correct, yeah. Almost. Step one.
Step one.
Step one, you say we need to talk. I can hear that, that's fine. It's more the end of the line, actually.
Okay.
So the actual lyrics are, step one, you say we need to talk. He walks, you say sit down, it's just a talk.
Mm-hmm.
So they're rhyming talk with talk, which I'll forgive them because it's such a beautiful song. But I hear it as, step one, you say we need to talk. He walks, you say sit down, it's just a duck.
Okay.
Do you want to listen to it again?
Yeah, so when I heard it, I heard the actual lyrics.
Okay.
There.
Okay, now I've put this duck idea in your head. Have another listen.
Step one, you say we need to talk. He walks, you say sit down, it's just talk. He smiles politely back at you.
That's kind of spoiled the song for me, unfortunately.
So yeah, that time I could hear it.
It's like that backmasking phenomenon where, you play a song backwards and you're supposed to hear a hidden message.
Mm-hmm.
And once you know what the message is supposed to be, your brain kind of locks onto that and you can't not hear that message in it. So that song I ruined for myself.
I think it is a little more than just the power of suggestion, though, because the words are very similar.
Yeah, they are. And also, the singer's delivery is quite slurred, like deliberately so. So that also kind of fuzzies up the words he's using.
And that might be part of it, because if he accidentally voices the T a little bit, then it's just the vowel sound that's different.
And another thing, actually, just not going too deep into this, but because the first line ends with need to talk, you would expect the second line to have a different word. You wouldn't rhyme talk with talk if you're writing lyrics, I guess. But so your brain is ready to hear something different. Can I play you another one, actually? I didn't actually plan this, Sam, so I'm just going to have to find it.
Okay.
This is by IQ. Have you heard of IQ?
I have not.
It's at about 9 minutes into the song. Let's just hear that again. The lyric is, I'm brought to life with a series of shocks.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just hear how that sounds.
Okay, the first time I heard it as with a series of shocks.
Yeah.
That time I heard it as with a series of sharks.
Yeah. That and then that just conjures up a mental picture in my head of.
Is that how you've been mishearing it then?
Yeah, a series of sharks. Like he's in A&E or something, and it's just sharks coming in, and more sharks.
Scare him into consciousness.
Yeah, maybe that's how it works.
Okay, so the first piece that I have is from a string quartet by Haydn. It's the last movement of Opus 33, number 2. For anybody who cares.
I think people will care. I think people will want to know. Yeah.
Yes. Well, it will help to find it, I guess. Yeah. The final movement from Opus 33, number 2, Haydn string quartet. It's about 3.5 minutes long, I think. I don't know if you want to listen to the whole thing or.
Yeah, let's listen to the whole thing. It's quite playful. That, yeah, that's quite funny. I think Haydn, did you say?
Yes.
The composer? I think he was trolling people.
Yes, what I didn't tell you before is that this quartet is nicknamed The Joke.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's a good joke. I like it.
So yes, when I first heard that, I thought it was the end after the repeat of the first, 4 phrases, when there was that big rest
Yes.
just before the very first phrase again.
Yes.
I thought that was the end there, which apparently was the point.
Yeah, no, he succeeded. That's a really good example of hearing something wrong, because you were expecting an end and it hadn't ended. So you knew that you were wrong because your expectation was
Yes.
not met. I was thinking about this. How do you know when you're hearing something wrong in music? I mean, if it's lyrics, you might mishear the lyrics, but they might still make sense to you, and so you never really question it.
Mm-hmm.
Like one example I have from when I was quite young. Do you know the Spice Girls? They were probably.
Yes, well, I know of them.
You know
I don't
of
know
them.
if I know the specific song.
No, and you don't know them in person either. Neither do I. But they had a song called Wannabe, and for years and years and years, I thought that the chorus went, if you want to be my lover, you've got to get rid of my friends. And to my sort of 10-year-old brain, that made a weird kind of sense. Like, because those are Spice Girls and they're all really good mates, and so if you're trying to get with one of the Spice Girls, you've got like this barrier of women who are kind of preventing you from. Anyway, and I think the actual lyrics are, if you want to be my lover, you've got to get with my friends.
Yes, I believe that is the correct lyric.
Now, the next line I also misheard. I thought it was. Sorry, it's so ridiculous. I thought it was making love forever, friendship never ends, and that used to confuse me. Like, making love forever, that's going to be tiring to start with. But then the next line, friendship never ends. But in the first line, she's saying, if you want to be my lover, you've got to get rid of my friends. So she's basically saying, you're never going to get rid of my friends because friendship never ends. And I was a very confused child. So with lyrics, you can tell that you're hearing it wrong, perhaps, because someone will just correct you. They'll say, no, those aren't the words. It actually goes like this. But yeah, how do you know in music if you're hearing it wrong?
Well, I guess one thing could be like in this Haydn, that you think something and then the music slaps you in the face and says no.
Yeah. I think you've got the perfect example there. Like, you're definitely expecting the end, and then nope, there's a little bit more, and then a little bit more. Shall I play you my next one?
Yeah.
I know at the start of the podcast we said we'd just play each other 3 bits of music, but I've got lots of examples of this, and I've even come up with a name for this phenomenon. It probably has a proper name in music. Here is ants marching. Do you know who ants marching is by?
It sounds familiar, but I couldn't say.
I'll give you a clue, actually. Andy from Parks and Rec, his favourite band.
Mouse Rat.
Oh, that's true. Mouse Rat. Apart from Mouse Rat, Andy's favourite band.
I'm not sure I can remember.
They're an American band. They've been going a long time, and I understand that they're very big in America, but people in the UK haven't really heard of them.
Nope, no idea.
Dave Matthews Band?
Okay, yeah. I have heard of them.
So, I'll just play you a few seconds of ants marching, Dave Matthews Band. Here we go. That's just an example of this phenomenon.
So the drum started on the offbeat, basically.
Yeah.
And you hear that as being the beat.
Correct. Yeah. So that's the phenomenon, and I want to call it 2 and 4 as 1 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying offbeat. I think a drummer would say 2 and 4 because that's where you accent with the snare.
Okay.
And I think what you would maybe call a downbeat is beat 1.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. How did you know that was what I was driving at?
I guess because when the drums come in on their own, you initially do hear that as being 1 and 3.
And when does your brain realise that you're not listening to 1 and 3, but you're actually listening to 2 and 4?
I think my brain adjusted quite quickly because it wasn't going for very long before everyone else came in.
So the question is, what was it about the rest of the band coming in that told your brain, oh wait, the snare I've been listening to is actually 2 and 4?
The chord changes were on beat 1. That's probably one of the most significant things in registering where the beat is.
How quickly do you think your brain would adjust to it now? If I play it again, can you say, like, now, when you're locked in to the intended 1, 2, 3, 4 pattern? Should we try that?
Probably not, because now that I have heard the beginning, I think I will now hear it as 2 and 4.
Really? Even when it's just those 3 isolated snare hits, you'll hear that as 2, 4, 2.
Maybe not. Yeah, let's have a listen.
Okay, another thing to think about is what beat do the rest of the band come in on?
That was on 1. I think they came in on 1.
They came in on 1. So those first 3 snare hits we hear aren't actually 2 and 4. They're 4 and 2, aren't they? It's like 4, 2, 3, 4, and then boom, the band come in. So there's an example of this thing that I want to call 2 and 4 as 1 and 3. As you say, the rest of the band come in really quickly, so the illusion doesn't last very long. Can I play you another song where I think the illusion lasts for far longer?
Yeah, go for it.
This is by a band called Don Broco. The song is called Yeah Man.
There was one point where I think it might have switched in my head. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm hearing it at the moment.
1, 2, 3, 4. Me too.
So yeah, it was when that section started.
Yeah, so that's about 26 seconds in. It's so weird, isn't it?
Can we listen like from 20 seconds?
Yeah, sure. If you want to listen at home, listen to Don Broco. The song is called Yeah Man, and see how long it takes you to hear the accent being on 2 and 4, because that's what the drummer is doing right from the beginning, but it really doesn't sound like it. So what's going on, Sam?
So I just want to check all the way through that up until 40 seconds. The drummer was doing the same thing the whole time.
Yeah, I say he's accenting 2 and 4. I think a more natural way to count it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so perhaps I would say the drummer is accenting the and on every beat. But you could count it 1 2 3 4 1 2
Yeah.
4. The second time I played it to you, I did actually hear the drums as intended.
That's an interesting thing, though. You say you heard the drums as intended. Like, do you think it is intended to be heard as 1 and 3 to start with?
I think that's a really good question. I suspect, based on the music that the other music that the band make, that they are not trying to trick you, because they're a straight ahead rock band. They're not trying to do anything to catch you out in their other songs that I've ever heard.
Okay.
Sam, what's your second piece you're going to play me?
The second piece that I've got for you is the Creed from a Mass setting by Victoria.
By Victoria?
Yeah. Tomás-Luis de Victoria. Actually, that's probably butchered pronunciation because I think he's Italian and I said that as if it were French.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm not sure of the exact year, but I would say late 16th century. Yeah, the Creed from a Mass setting. And I'm just going to press play. This is about 6 minutes long. I don't know if you want me to skip to partway through because it's like in the second half. Okay, we're nearly there. The amens will be the bit. So, how did the end of that sound to you?
It didn't, to my ear, it didn't go where I was expecting it to. I might say it didn't sound like it resolved. It just sounded like it was hanging. And if you were to play it again, I could sing where I would want it to go. Or ba 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 bum, with bum being the root. So either the major of that chord or the minor.
So that was A that you were singing.
Right.
This is going to be a trick question, but what key would you say that piece was in?
If I was singing an A, and that's what I thought the final chord should be, I would say, okay, that it's in the key of A.
Major or minor?
Well, when I was listening at the end there, I thought it ought to go to major. So
You thought that it should end on an A major chord?
Yeah, yeah, that felt...
Okay.
That's what I was expecting.
Okay. So it actually ended on what we would call an E major chord.
Yes.
So to you, did it sound like it ended on chord 5?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, of course, that was I was intentionally being misleading there, because I'm sure you have already guessed it's not in a key.
Okay.
It's modal.
Okay.
It's in the Hypo Phrygian mode.
Hypo Phrygian.
Hypo Phrygian.
Hypo.
So yeah, this is in the 4th mode, or the Hypo Phrygian mode.
The fourth mode.
The fourth mode.
You say that like there's a finite number of modes. Like, this is mode number 4.
So in modal theory of this time, there are 8 church modes.
Right.
They're called church modes, and there's 8 of them. This one is in the 4th one.
Okay.
Because it gets confusing, we have named them as well.
Okay, so this is the Hypo Phrygian mode.
Yes.
So, what is the Hypo Phrygian mode? What are the notes that are in it?
The notes are essentially all of the white notes, and then the final is E.
Ah, so to me that sounds like E Phrygian. If you were to start on the piano and play E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, that would be E Phrygian. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is where it's maybe a bit weird from your perspective. The Hypo Phrygian mode has all of the same notes and the same final.
Okay.
The difference is in the range and the note of secondary importance.
What do you mean by note of secondary importance?
If we go back to something more familiar, if we're in C major...
Yes. C and G.
Yeah, there you go.
They're the most important.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, in modal theory, it's a similar kind of relationship.
Okay, so
you've got a kind of hierarchy of importance, almost.
Okay, so perhaps in E Phrygian, I might say that E and B are the most important.
In this modal theory, it would be E and C.
Oh, okay.
Because B is... but basically they didn't like B being too important. Because it could be a soft B or a hard B, what we would call a B natural or B flat.
Oh, that's a bit ambiguous. If the most important note is actually allowed to, yeah, I can see why they might not like that.
So yeah, because it existed in 2 forms. I mean, this is kind of oversimplifying, and maybe not everything I'm saying is completely justified, but yeah, E and C would be the important notes in the Phrygian. In the Hypo Phrygian, it's E and A.
Okay. Right, I feel like we're getting towards an answer here. So, instead of me interrupting you, tell me what's going on in the piece that you played.
In this one, at the end, the final cadence is on E, and we get what's essentially an E major chord at the end. But I think your ear, and when I first started listening to this kind of music, my ear as well, hears this as being in A minor, because firstly we get cadences on E and A, which is the same that you would get if we were in A minor, because A would be the most important and then E. And also the notes that are being used are all of the white notes, but there's also some G sharps for the cadences on A, which is also what you would expect from being in A minor. So it kind of sounds like an A minor, and then you get this final cadence on E, and you're left a little bit confused.
I think I understand. So, if the piece were in A minor, A would be very important as a note, and also E.
Mm-hmm.
So they are the 1st and the 5th scale degree. What you're saying, though, is that in this Hypo Phrygian mode, it's actually E and A that are the most important, and in a way that's the same as the key of A minor, except the other way round. In A minor it's A and E, and in Hypo Phrygian it's E and A. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yeah.
To the composer of this piece, would he have felt that ending was correct? Because it ends on the most important note of the mode.
Yes, yeah, it's the modes are kind of defined by their final note. It's called the final. whereas in a key would say something like the tonic or 1. So yeah, to the composer, it wouldn't have sounded like A minor. A minor wasn't a thing.
I'm just thinking about pop, rock and jazz. You do have songs which are unresolved, deliberately ending on chord 4, perhaps. Is there any... No, there is no similarity there, because the composer of your piece of music wouldn't have thought that he was deliberately trying to catch people out at all. Do you think that to his ear that sounded complete?
Yes.
That is so weird to think that. Okay, here's a question, Sam. Presumably you've listened to a lot of music from that time period.
Mm-hmm.
Has your ear kind of changed as a result, so that when you listen to that piece, you don't hear it as unresolved? You think, yep, that's the correct ending.
It has absolutely changed my ear. There are lots of examples that now I would think sounded perfectly normal, and yep, okay, that's the end. Where I can remember first hearing them a long time ago and thinking, oh, that's interesting. And, you know, I think when I was about 14, 15, I came to the conclusion, okay, if I want to make something sound like it's from the Renaissance, I'll just end it on chord 5.
That's like a top tip. Sam's top tips. If you want to make it sound like it's from the Renaissance, end on chord 5.
But yeah, since then, as I've listened to more of this, it's become more internalised, and that doesn't sound like chord 5 anymore to me. I did choose this specific example because it's quite good at convincing. So this one I do kind of hear a little bit. It feels a bit like A minor.
Right.
Maybe I'll play you another example then, but I'd be interested to hear what you think. One that to me definitely doesn't sound like chord 5.
Okay.
But that's... You could still hear that as being in A minor and just ending the section with an imperfect cadence.
Right. Here's a question. You say that your ear has definitely changed. When you listen to, say, pop music, if a piece were to end on chord 5, which would be unusual, would you recognise it as unusual, or would you think, oh, that's okay?
I would recognise it as being different. I'm pretty sure I have heard pop songs that end unresolved on chord 5, but that, to me, those definitely do sound like chord 5.
So, psychologically, there must be something about the arrangement. Is that the correct word? The fact that it is 4-part vocal harmony. Is that correct?
Yes, it's partially to do with the kind of harmonic language that's used in the rest of the piece. So, for example, if a pop song ends on chord 5, up until that point, it's likely to have been recognisable to me as functional harmony, where I can say, this is chord 4, this is chord 1, whereas this kind of music, it doesn't work like that.
Okay, when you listen to a song like this, it's the lead up to that ending that tells your brain to perhaps expect that type of ending.
And it's worth pointing out that there are lots of pieces where the final cadence you could hear as being perfectly ordinary because it's in a different mode where you can hear it as being tonal.
Okay. Play me this other example.
This is near the end.
Ba, 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 bum. That's how I would want that to end. I see. That's another example of it ending on what I would call chord 5.
Apart from that time, it was a minor chord, so it didn't have what would be the leading note of A minor. But yeah, that one to me, that doesn't at all sound like chord 5 to me. I don't hear that as being in A minor.
Is there a name for, or do you have your own name for this phenomenon?
Well, I haven't really thought about. I guess I would summarise it as like a modern ear mishearing a mode as a key, resulting in ending on chord 5.
Sure. I feel like I really want to get at this question of what does it mean to hear something wrong? Because who's to judge whether you're hearing it wrong? You hear music as you hear it. I wonder, does it come down to the composer's intention? And if the listener's experience doesn't match what the composer was intending, could you argue that the listener has made a mistake somehow?
It's an interesting question. I mean, obviously you can hear something different from what the composer intended, and you can hear something different from what the composer would hear, but really saying whether you can hear something wrong is maybe not an answerable question. I have
a little tangent possibly that might help us to get at this. On YouTube, seems to be some craving for a particular. I'm not being very articulate here. For something to be done to songs on YouTube, there's this community of people that do something horrible to songs, and what's interesting is in the comments on some of these videos you'll get people saying, I don't see what's wrong with this, and other people saying, this is awful, what have they done to this song? And then you'll have other people saying, I know what they've done to this song. They've isolated the vocals, they've pitch shifted it half a semitone, and then put it back over the original backing. Have you heard this before, Sam?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I would argue that people who don't see anything or don't hear anything wrong with tracks like this are hearing it wrong because the vocals are out of tune, and if people can't hear that a voice is half a semitone out of tune, to me that's a mistake.
Okay, I mean, there is a greater degree of objectivity there because you can quantify the proportions between the vocal and pitches being played by instruments or backing singers. You can say that this sounds in tune, meaning a nice ratio. It's a lot harder to quantify the concept of sounding in a key, for example.
Yeah, maybe. Although, isn't that what music theory does?
Yes. So yeah, you could say that you're hearing it wrong if a theorist tells you that you're hearing it wrong, then. But something about that doesn't feel right.
I can imagine people saying, music is art, and there's no such thing as having a wrong opinion about art, or whatever experience you get from listening to music, that's your experience, and you can't possibly be wrong. It doesn't even make sense, like you said earlier. So suppose that someone someone with a modern ear wanted to hear Renaissance music as just natural, correct, sitting comfortably. What would you suggest that person do?
I think if you just listen to a lot of it, it starts to feel more natural. So if someone without any musical training, for example, still hears music and on some level understands the structure of tonality, because if you played them something atonal, someone with no musical training could say that sounds horrible or
Yeah.
like that it's not in tune, or they would say something even without any training. You have some internalized understanding of tonality, which you get just from being exposed to music. Yeah, if you expose yourself to this kind of music, you develop the same kind of thing.
So Sam, we're up to our third and final piece each. I will go first. This song I'd like to play is called Fear of a Blank Planet. It's by Porcupine Tree, and it's only really the first maybe 10 seconds that we're going to focus on. Sam, I'm going to assume that you haven't heard Fear of a... I can't say it. I think it's the of following the fear. Fear of a Blank Planet. I'm guessing you haven't heard it.
I haven't, no.
No, right, so here it is. Okay, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that little clip. My question for you is, what time signature is that in?
So I would say that's in 12/8.
Okay, that's very interesting. If you were the drummer, what kind of a beat would you play once, because the band are just about to come in? What would you play?
I don't know, because I'm not very good at drumming, but I would guess I'd play the bass drum on every beat. Every dotted crotchet beat.
Okay, what I'm really, really wanting, Sam, is for you to mouth it. Like, instead of all this dotted crotchet nonsense, let's hear you do some beatboxing.
I'm not sure I'm physically capable of that. Yeah, beyond the bass drum, I wouldn't know what to do with any of the other drums or cymbals.
Okay, forget the cymbals. You've got a bass drum and you've got a snare drum.
Okay, I can't keep up. I don't know. So, I guess something in 4 in quadruple time. Boom, ta, ta, boom, ta, ta.
Okay.
Anything like that. But I'm not a drummer, so I don't really know.
Okay. If I play it again, and you kind of think about what you'd want over it. So you're going 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the...
Yeah.
So 12/8, as you said. Okay, do you want to listen to what Gavin Harrison, the drummer, actually plays? Let's get back to the beginning. Oh, it's exciting. How would you describe that time signature?
See, I can't quite decide. It started off sounding in 4. Yeah, it started off to me when the drums came in sounding in 4 with the quaver beat the same as the previous 12/8. But then I started to hear it as like being in 2 time signatures at once.
Okay.
So I was hearing the drums in 4 and the guitar in 12 with the quaver beat the same.
Just to help me more than anything, when you say hear the drums in 4, I wonder, could you count out loud over the drums, so I can translate into the way that I think of it. Because I'm not quite sure what you mean by hearing the drums in 4. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3.
And then that carries on.
Yeah. Okay. And the drums are going to come in very soon.
3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1,
Okay.
2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. While the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, while that carries on.
Okay. That's interesting. So, I guess the only difference is I would describe the drumming as being in 6/4. The way I would count it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The reason I count it that way is that's the length of the guitar phrase, and also if you listen to when the drummer is doing fills, he's accenting beat 1.
Yeah.
What I find with that guitar intro is, have you seen that a GIF image? Is it GIF? Is that what you say? GIF?
Maybe we shouldn't go here. I am undecided.
Okay. Like the very image itself, there was this image going around on Facebook like a few years ago, which was of a subway train, but the subway train was going so fast that the camera frame rate couldn't match the speed of the carriages going past. And the caption underneath the picture said, change the direction of the train with your mind. And if you kind of looked at the picture one way and thought about it, you could see the train sort of coming towards you, and then you could, as if by magic, just make it change direction so it was going away from you instead. And that's what I get with this intro, that when it first starts, I hear it as 6/4, and I could easily count 6/4 over the guitar. But the second time that guitar pattern repeats, because it's identical the second time, I then start to hear it as 12/8.
Okay.
Do you want to listen?
Yeah.
See if you can hear it. I think first of all, because your initial reaction was that guitar pattern is in 12/8. So see if you can hear it as 6/4 instead.
No, not until the drums come in.
Okay.
But when the drums came in that time, I did hear it in 6. Like, so when I said 4 before, I think what I was hearing was 2, if that makes sense. I was thinking in smaller subdivisions, so I heard 2 and assumed 4 instead of 6.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean, but okay. One thing I find is I can play like just that opening riff. I can play that on the guitar, and when I play it, the first time I play it through, I feel it in 6, and then on the second time, I start to feel it as 12/8, and it's so weird. And I wonder, I haven't actually done this, but if you were to analyse the waveform, are the accents slightly different? Or is it like a copy-paste job that the second time it is identical to the first time? It is just like that train illusion. Like, I don't think you're going to be able to hear it differently. Maybe if the way we'll probably have to cut this. The way I hear it, if I sing it, the first time I hear it is so
Was that how you heard it the first time you listened to it?
Yeah, the very first time I heard it. But then the second time it comes round, I hear the bass note on the guitar more strongly.
In the first bar or the first few beats, the very first time, I wasn't quite sure where the accent was, whether it was on the third or the fourth note. But the second time I heard it, I definitely heard it in 12.
Yeah.
And the first time after the first few notes.
I don't know what the intention of Porcupine Tree was, but I assume that it's 6/4. But you might be right. It might be 12/8, and 6/4, and that's what they want.
I think I think maybe the reason for this is because maybe they are accenting it as if it were in 6, but because of the pitches, that the pitches imply 12.
I agree, because the pitches go low, high, high, low, high, high, low, high, high,
Yeah.
low, high, high. But perhaps, and we'd need to look at the waveform, the accents.
Yeah, so the lower pitch is the first of a set of 3. The accent's the first of a set of 2. It's a lot easier to describe it than try and say the words low and high while doing the accent. I think it'd be easier to play it.
Sam, it's time for your final piece. Would you like to introduce?
Okay.
The final piece that I have is a march for an orchestra by a 20th century American composer. You might have heard it before. I'm just going to pause it there.
Oh, right.
What key are we in?
Could you just play it again?
Yeah.
'Cause just... Okay, stop.
Okay.
Key.
Okay, that's a C.
C. We're in the key of C.
Okay, I'm just going to press play again and tell me if you hear a key change.
Okay. Yeah. So if the introduction is in C, then when Luke's theme comes in, I would say that's in F.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yeah, it's in F minor.
F. Oh yeah. Oh sure. Yeah.
But do you hear that as a key change?
No. Does it work? Because actually, the intro is building up like this sort of C7 chord, like ba 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 ba, and then you go to F minor.
Yes. Yeah. But it's actually a little bit more than that. I mean, on paper, that initial fanfare is definitely in F minor.
Okay.
On paper, you've got this C chord building up, but you've got some A flats in there.
Yes. Yeah. I can hear those.
And also, you get an E flat at one point. So you get kind of this outline of F minor, and I think it's clouded a little bit because you get a secondary dominant just before the final C chord. So you actually get a G chord to get what would be 5/1 in C. So yeah, if you listen to that beginning, it sounds, to me anyway, it sounds like, okay, we're in C here, even though you've got all these notes that aren't in C.
Sure.
But then it also doesn't sound like we've changed key.
Yeah. It's a paradox.
Yeah.
We are in C, except we're not, and we've changed key, except... No, sorry, you said that it doesn't feel like we've changed key. But if you thought that we were in C, then we would have to change key to go to F minor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's clever. What do you think John Williams was intending?
I think he was intending for it to be in F minor for a couple of reasons. The overall structure of
the music under that scene it's like a simplified version of a typical march form.
Right.
So I don't want to get into loads of detail about that because it won't be interesting. But yeah, basically, I think what he was intending was, here is a big dominant pedal before we start the march.
It's such a great piece of music.
Yeah, it is. I kind of want to just listen to it all the way through now.
Sam, why is that a particularly special piece of music to you?
Because last month I got married and we walked out of the church to this.
Ooh, except what did it say on the order of service?
It just said exeunt pursued by vicars.
And on that note is... Oh, you didn't cringe at my joke, Sam.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to cringe that time.
Okay, I'll say it again. So on that note...
Alan, that was terrible.
Thanks. On that note, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him. I'm sorry, I can't not do that. If you say that, I'm going to say that. Okay.
It's goodbye from Sam. And it's goodbye from me. Next time... hang on. It's not actually goodbye. Next time, we might talk about rhythm. And Sam, I have a piece of homework for you.
Mm-hmm.
There's a song, and I'd like you to work out how to count it.
Okay.
The song is called Tricky, so there's a bit of a clue there that this is going to be difficult. And it's by Benny Greb. Would you like to have a listen now?
Yeah, all right then.
Listen. This... Just... Good luck. Alexa, play Tricky by Benny Greb.
Tricky by Benny Greb.
Cool. Just so that I don't spend ages trying to work this bit out. Once I've established a pattern, can I keep counting in the same pattern all the way through, or does it change?
Yeah,
irregularly?
That's a really good question. No, once you've figured out the pattern, then the whole song follows that pattern.
Okay.
I'll give you a hint. There are the way that I count it is in 3 distinct sections: A, B, C, and the song just goes A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C. So,
okay.
You're not allowed to look it up
Mm-hmm.
to see what other people say. Just to raise the stakes, it took me... just trying to think. It's probably taken me at least half an hour to figure it out. It's very tricky.